Hello and welcome to this BB Education cutting tutorial. This tutorial is called the Roxy, inspired by the 1920s short jawline graduated bob. We begin this haircut with a simple delta section, which is working from a high crown position to a mid recession, forming the shape resembling a V. This means we work from a lower position at the front, working to a high position at the crown. This is our starting section. We're going to begin this haircut with the length, but in a relatively peculiar way, as we don't start at the back and we start at the side. And we don't start with a horizontal section, we start with a diagonal back section. This section helps us to decide on the length basing it on the features of the client. We're going to pull the section down to a 0 elevation, holding the section in our free hand, using the comb as a ruler, and we begin to tap at the root to reduce tension and tap above the comb to keep the elevation low. We begin to cut to our chosen length, ensuring that the length is slightly lower as we head towards the back of the head. Section 2 is cut with a parallel section. The sections are groomed back down to a natural fall, knitted together. So now we have a guideline. We pull the sections down and you can see here the section is getting a tiny bit lower as we head towards the back. This is giving the appearance of the line being round, as it works from a high position at the front to a lower position at the back. So here you see we tap above and below the ear and we tap above the comb. Tapping above and below the ear is about tension, ensuring the hair is sitting as true to natural fall as possible. Tapping above the comb is elevation, keeping the elevation low. Our section now has become a lot bigger, expanding it into the back, but we still maintain all the same disciplines. We still maintain a body position working parallel to the section we're cutting. We still maintain 0 elevation, and we still maintain 0 over direction, so we don't lift the hair and we don't move it side to side. The lower the elevation, the stronger and more precise the line will look. As you're working into the back and you encounter any hairline, you may decide to work more freehand, as I am here. Freehand means we are choosing to work with next to no tension. This will help us to work with a difficult hairline. So if you are coming up against a part of the hairline that is stronger than a different part, you can vary the tension to help to equalize the end result. As you can see here, we're working through all our sections in much the same way, all being combed down to a natural fall, using no over direction and 0 elevation. We take our final section down, tap above the comb, and we cut to blend in to the existing guide. So as we complete the other side, we pull down the same section and begin on the opposite side. Using the mirror is essential in getting balance with your chosen length on the opposite side to this side. So using the mirror, ensuring that the sections are correct and balanced before proceeding. We work in exactly the same way. All our sections are pulled down to a 0 elevation, no over direction, and we bring all the sections down to create our rounded line. What is a rounded line? It's where the line seems to go slightly lower at the back than the front, giving the appearance of a curve or more roundness. Once complete, we're able to look at starting to put our graduation in, but we need to secure the lengths. To do that, we take a diagonal back section, roughly 2 inches in from the hairline. This ensures by disconnecting these sections that we do not create holes behind the ears of our shape. Due to how the hairline changes, from the corner to around the ear, the hairline begins to recede from the mastoid process, or the corner of the hairline. That is why we have these sections in place, to ensure that the graduation we begin to apply to the length does not end up creating holes behind the ear. We're going to begin our graduation with a vertical section. This gives us the advantage of being able to see the impact the graduation will have on the length, but also to control where the weight line will begin to build. We control this with elevation and with distribution. So elevation is moving the section up and down. Anything pulled below its own base will build weight. Anything pulled above its own base will remove it. So you don't necessarily have to pull the section down low to build weight. We're pulling the elevation just slightly off its own base. And our vertical cutting section is going to be shorter at the base and longer to the top. We call this vertically triangular. But the closer our triangle shape goes towards the top, the flatter the weight line will look and the shorter the section will be. The lower your finger angle is, the heavier and more bulbous the weight line will be. So here my elevation is pulled almost directly straight out, just below its own natural base, and we're working a vertical triangle shape, which means that it's getting shorter and shorter the closer towards the nape. Once completed section 1, we take a parallel section to form section 2. We over-direct section 2 onto the base of section 1. The over-direction here is helping us to control the increase in length travelling to behind the ear. We take all our sections and over-direct them onto the previous. Over-directing onto the previous section gives us a slow increase of length to behind the ear. If you wanted a more rapid increase in length, you could over-direct all of your subsequent sections to a stationary guide, which means all the sections are pulled back to the original section, section 1. This will give you a more rapid increase of length. For this tutorial, we've chosen to work with a more gradual increase of length, which means we're working horizontally square or flat. Over-directing onto the previous gives us a slower increase than over-directing back to a stationary guide. As we complete the final section, we'll groom the hair down, take away our disconnected section, and obviously due to the disconnection we haven't taken away anything from the length. We now begin the opposite side. Notice that my hands now have switched round. My scissors are now coming up, whereas on the previous side they were going down. We work exactly the same way. Section 2 was over-directed onto 1. 3 will be over-directed onto 2. Another advantage to numbering your sections is it helps you to ensure that you cut the same amount of sections on each side. This helps to ensure consistency with your section size. Once we've completed it, we can begin to cross-check our work, which is pulling the hair in the opposite direction we've just cut it. Essentially, we check all of the previously cut sections at once. Now we groom the hair down, we can begin to assess our shape. So here we have our shape so far. We have internally graduated our shape, working higher in the center profile, getting longer towards the shape behind the ear. You can see here the shape is quite short with our graduation. The weight line has been positioned reasonably high, but we have not taken away the corner behind the ear. Had we not have disconnected our section, the chances are we would have ended up with reducing bulk around that area. We now take 4 diagonal sections, creating a veil that is falling over the top of the section we've just cut. This veil is what we need to cut, but where do we get the guideline from? The guideline is going to come from the top of the weight line from what we've just produced. So the top of your weight line is the guideline. You've got to knit together this section and the new section, the veil if you will. To decide on where they are cut, we use elevation. The lower we bring the sections together, or the higher, you'll always find a guideline. The significance between being low or high is about the length and the weight. The lower the section is pulled, the heavier and longer the shape will look, the more pronounced the weight line. The higher the section is lifted, the less weight is formed and the flatter the appearance of the shape. All of the sections behind the ear are pulled directly onto the previous, so they're pulled flat back to form a flat horizontal shape. If you notice, the elevation here is lifted high. We're pulling away from what we want to keep. We want to keep the length, so we're pulling away from it. We want to keep the length at the front, so we're going to utilize more over direction in this section to ensure we keep the length. So lifting the section and pulling away with over direction, these are all necessary mechanics to assist us with not losing the length around the ear. To continue, take the next section parallel to the previous, a 4 diagonal section working higher at the back and lower at the front. As we continue, we work to always only have 2 sections in our hands at once. This means we only want the previously cut section and the new section being knit together. You don't want to be having a lot of hair in your hands at this point, as it may become very confusing as to where the guide is. You can see that we're maintaining the same mechanics. All the hair behind the ear is pulled flat, meaning parallel to the wall behind you. Your body position needs to be stood at the back to achieve this. Do not let your body position drift forward until you get to the section which is over the ear. For this part, feel free to take a step over into the front, as we do not utilize as much over direction in this particular section. We continue bringing sections down and ensuring we work neat and methodical, only having 2 sections in our hands at once to ensure it becomes very clear where we need to lower our cutting sections to. As we work through this, maintain a flat body position at the back of your client for all sections behind the ear. Once your sections drift forward of the ear, feel free to step slightly forward and ensure that you have a higher elevation at the sides behind the ear and over the ear, ensuring that we lift away from what we'd like to keep, which is the length. So we keep repeating all the same processes until we reach our delta section. Don't be too nervous about the elevation being pulled too high on the sections over and behind the ear. Remember, the reason the elevation is lifted here is to preserve the length. Once I complete this, quite often I like to place a small clip just to create a slight bend as the hair dries, giving more softness to the face. Now we have completed all the underneath of our section, we can start to look at drying this section off. The reason we dry this section is it's not going to be connecting into the top perfectly like all the underneath sections have been. Instead, we're going to take a more visual approach to ensure that we create a more shattered feel to the top sections. So initially we just begin with wrap drying the hair to ensure we can assess how the hair will fall natural, how the graduation sits, how the disconnection looks within our shape. The importance of this is now to personalize and perfect the initial aspects of the haircut, and then use this as a visual approach to ensure we can match the top without connecting it, but still make it look visually balanced and connected. So once we've dried this section and the hair is still warm, I place a little no mark clip in, so as the hair cools, it's setting in a nice position I want. Wrap drying for me is always something that is a little bit overlooked, but it's a really good opportunity to almost check your work. You can be looking at the silhouette in the mirror, assessing the weight buildup of your haircut. You can assess the shape of the length. Is it accurate? Is it correct? But wrap drying really is about wrapping the hair around the head, stretching the hair if you will, ensuring we get full control over the root, and we smooth the cuticle, leaving the hair in a position where we can then look at refining it. When it comes to refining this shape, I'm taking a relatively different approach. As you can see, I'm using my razor. I'm using a razor instead of using a neck hair trimmer. The neck hair trimmer would work very well at just removing small pieces of hair that are not making the haircut or adding anything to the precision, essentially tidying up the shape. So why am I using a razor? The razor for me adds more softness and a more sculpted feel to the shape. It looks more tailored. I can really feel where the weight is more. As I start to press my razor on, the more resistance I get, I know the area is thicker, and that will require more pressure from the razor to remove more bulk out of that shape. So it's a very personalized method to sculpting my shape. Using a razor like this gives me the freedom to really bevel and curve the shape. I'm choosing to use my razor here to remove a lot of bulk towards the bottom, leaving the shape heavier at the top and going lighter towards the bottom. It helps to give me a more accurate feeling to the hair. As I'm going through, I can feel the resistance of the thickness of the hair on my blade. When I feel that thickness and that resistance, I know I need to apply more pressure with my razor. You can really start to see the shape developing, giving me a softer outline and giving a very neat blended feel to my graduation. So in summary, the reason I've chosen to use a razor is because it gives a much softer appearance to the precision of the shape than should if I had chosen to use the clippers. When you start the other side, it's very important that you use the mirror quite often to assess the balance in both sides, as it's sometimes not obvious when you're looking at it up close. Move your client's head back and forth, assessing the other side, ensuring there is balance and there is symmetry. Work throughout the sections in much the same way, using the mirror and taking a step back to assess your work. And here we have our look ready to start the top. It's balanced and it's precise, and we have a nice expanded shape showing the neatness of the graduation. But what the razor's added is all the lengths are very soft and very easy to interchange. It's my feeling that this is much more suitable for the salon floor than using a neck hair trimmer. we now come to refining the length. Our objective here is to remove graduation and make the length look more natural by collapsing the line. We have three main options open to us. The option I'm using at the moment is chipping. Chipping is cutting directly into the line. This is a form of texturizing. It doesn't really change the line, but it flattens it. The other one is club cutting. Club cutting is where I cut straight across to remove a lot of hair. That's not that necessary. So what you see me doing right now is pointing, using the very tip of my scissor to remove small amounts of hair and ensure that the line is fluid, meaning consistent and neat. When you see me point cut into the line, which is chipping, that is helping to collapse the line. This gives more natural appearance to the line and helps it to sit more flatter. I repeat these processes until I'm visually happy that the line is looking balanced. To finish with, I use a light amount of club cutting to give a more crisp, precise feel to the line. We then can assess how the line looks from the front to behind the ear. We then come to the section behind the ear, working from the left into the centre, from the centre to the right behind the ear. Once we have this balanced, we can then proceed working from the corner into the front on the right hand side. So to do that, you'll see we'll start from the back, working all the way forward, using club cutting, pointing and chipping. Club cutting is what we use to remove a lot of hair. It also is used to finish with to give a very crisp effect to the line. Pointing is used to remove very, very small amounts of hair, giving a very precise feel to our line. And here we can see our line is almost complete. We've got a nice balance working from the front to the back, from the back to the opposite side. Once you're happy and this element is complete, we can then begin to look at the top. We take quite large sections down, and once again we go for our razor. These sections are working parallel to the forward diagonal line we've already cut in. So we're not necessarily looking for a guide to blend into here. We take a visual analysis of where the lengths are currently sitting, and we ensure we cut just below that with our razor. So again, we're not knitting these together. We're making sure that the top section is cut a fraction longer than the hair underneath. The fact these two sections do not blend in will give an immediate softness and texture to the way the shape forms. So let's look at the other side. We take our section relatively thick, working parallel to the way this hair was mapped. Using our razor, we go through and begin to connect in our line visually, as we don't have a firm guideline. We let the hair sit below the length of the previously cut hair. So whilst we take notice of it, we don't use it as a guideline. I then take my section and begin doing some surface cutting, which helps to taper and thin out the appearance of the line, making the hair on top, on the edges, seem more transparent, giving a more blended feel to the appearance of the shape. Once this is complete, I attach the nozzle to concentrate the heat flow, and I begin to wrap dry the top of my sections. Initially, I wrap dry as if there is no parting, bringing all the hair forward, drying the hair from left to right, from right to left. This will help to get more smoothness on the hair around the top and get a more straighter feel. I then use a ceramic brush and create a slight bevel or bend in the mid-lengths of my shape, allowing the hair to cool, creating smoothness throughout the cuticle. I then pin the section in, allowing it to dry to help to set the shape. Here we have our shape dried and ready. Again, don't be too worried by the fact that there's a lot of disconnection at the moment. We haven't quite finished yet. Pinning the sections is optional. I do it to help set the look. Moving into what we do next, the top of the hair feels a little bit too thick. So using my razor again, I work more internally than externally. What does that mean? It means I'm concentrating on removing bulk, not weight. I'm not just working to point cut the edges of the hair, I'm using surface cutting to ensure that the edges of the hair are more transparent in the undercut. The technique I'm using is surface cutting. This is where we hold the hair with high tension, but we apply a very gentle approach to the use of the razor, ensuring we do not take away too much hair. We visually begin to shape the line, holding the hair with the comb, reducing the tension, and doing more surface cutting. We then go back to our scissors and begin to take off the elements of hair that do not flow in a fluid way with our line. The objective is not to have hair that you can see as disconnected, but it's to create a very soft interchangeable shape, a play if you will, on a classic haircut, using channel cutting if necessary to flatten the shape further. Moving on to the other side, we adopt very similar techniques. What we do on one side, we need to do on the other to ensure balance and consistency. Again, a very gentle approach with the razor, but a very firm hand with the tension. This technique is used to create a more transparency in the lengths, giving more of a blended feel. Do ensure that you're always using the mirror when it comes to something quite visual. The mirror is a great way of assessing how the shape is developing. Looking at it from a distance is different from looking at the detail up front. So even when you're cutting your line, as we are now, use that mirror and assess the form and balance of your shape. It is my feeling that the methods used in texturizing are heavily influenced by the suitability they have on the client's hair and on the client themselves. Working with such aggressive techniques might not be suitable for every hair texture. Ensure that you review the methods you're going to use based on the suitability they have on the client's hair you're working on. This completes today's tutorial. We really hope you've enjoyed our take on working with a classic 1920s bob, but putting a soft disconnected spin to ensure the haircut retained a salon wearable quality. Thanks for watching, and we hope to see you again soon.